studying again the 10 knowledge areas, the processes within the process groups, and then I would go to the math equations. Then from the math equations, I would go into the inputs, outputs, tools, and techniques. So I will show you kind of what I did to understand those a little bit better if I Thank you so much for choosing this video of all the videos to learn more about the PMP. I'm going to be breaking down what I learned through the 2.5-month process that I studied for the exam, and even a year-long journey when I even originally decided to apply to take the exam. So Dr. King and I are coming to you to talk about the studying process. So I personally took 2.5 months to study for the PMP exam. So I came back from my travels in March, and then I began studying for the PMP in mid-April. So I began my 35 contact hours on Udemy, which I have links to in my previous video on how to apply for the PMP exam. And then after I finished my 35 contact hours, which I did an hour in the morning, and then I would do 2 hours in the afternoon, sometimes 3 hours if I was in the middle of a module and I just wanted to get to the quiz and finish. And that helped me because I was also working full time, but I was working from home. So it helped me stay on a schedule. And during this time, I had, no, I was still on social media. But anyways, that really helped me in getting things accomplished and finished, and that's also what pushed me to increase from 2 hours in the afternoon to 3 hours in the afternoon because I was seeing how long it was going to take me. And then each weekend I committed to 1 hour in the morning and then 2 hours in the evening of the 35 contact hours using the Udemy course. So that helped me gauge how quickly I was going to finish the 35 contact hours, and it also helped me to break up the day because I was working full time. So I would wake up maybe around 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., do that for an hour, and then, like I said, I would clock out of work maybe around 5 or 6, depending. And then I would pretty much study from 7 to 10 or finish my modules from 7 to 10 or 7 to 9. And that was great because it's interactive to a certain extent, or at least you're listening to somebody, but they're also like teaching you information. So it's not just rigorous studying the entire time. And then during that 35 hours, if I could give you any tips, just go ahead and take it like a regular class. Like, you can be very focused on doing the quizzes after every module, or you can make sure that you do all of the like homework assignments in a way. But at this point, if you just want to get through the 35 contact hours and focus more on studying afterwards, that is an option. So after you finish the 35 contact hours, that's when the studying begins. So I went ahead and I started to memorize the 10 knowledge areas. So I memorize things best by writing them down. So I would write down each of the knowledge areas on a piece of paper, like a legal pad. And then after I would do that, I would just keep writing it and then blocking it away from myself so that I could just keep writing it. Then there's also this great app called Quizlet. And I had that for almost a year because I told you I was trying to study for this exam a year ago, and I just couldn't focus and block out a lot of the things that were going on in my life to focus on studying. But this app was helpful because at least it was on the move with me. So like if I was on a plane, I could pull out different types of like gamified learning techniques. And then also when I would get bored of doing my processes, then I could just skip over. And there's also people who are also using the Quizlet app. So they'll put together flashcards, and so you don't even have to type your own flashcards. Just make sure you review them so you trust their definitions and things like that, but you don't have to rewrite. So there's tons of people who've taken the PMP and used this app. So that was also really helpful. So now, once I finished doing the 10 knowledge areas, then I moved to memorizing the 49 processes within the 5 process groups. So that is pretty much like a matrix almost. And the same thing, I would write down all of the 10 knowledge areas, and then I would write down at the top the 5 process groups, and then in each little section, I would write down what the processes are that matched with that knowledge group and that process.
Hold up.
Carry on. And then I watched a lot of videos that kind of gave you a better understanding of the process groups and the processes and what they are, how they coincide with one another, because they're so interconnected. But when you're studying it, you're just trying to memorize it, so you don't realize how they're connected. But it is important for you to know how they're used. At this point, I watched a completely different course specifically focused on mathematics, and that was really helpful because it went into depth on each of the different formulas that you might need to use within each of the knowledge areas for procurement, for cost. So if you think that you might be not as confident, which the most important part is being confident when you take this test, then it was great for me to use that Udemy course. And I'll make sure that I link that as well in the description. And it was wonderful because this specific gentleman who had his course, he would explain everything. Like even the stuff that you'd already gotten you didn't think needed an explanation, he would explain why the answer was incorrect, why the answer was correct, and then even like some tips and tricks, or what he's like, this isn't even going to be on the exam, don't worry about it, but this is how you do it, or this is the minimum of what you need to know. So that was really helpful. Then after I studied math, then I would go to ITTOs. Inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs. This was overwhelming for me because there are over 100 tools, techniques, inputs, and outputs. And let me say it in its order. Inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs. I was very overwhelmed. I did not know how I was going to memorize all of this. But when you go on YouTube, they specifically tell you, you do not memorize. Do not memorize these things. You need to understand what is the input to developing a project plan. Then what are the tools and techniques for that project plan, and understand why they're used, how they're used, and then what's the output for developing a project plan, which is the project plan. So anyways, I just focused on outputs. So I found this amazing woman named Eileen Ellis, and I will link her in the descriptions as well. And so I found 2 really good videos that she has for free on YouTube that helps you understand inputs, outputs, tools, and techniques. And from there, that's when I just paid the $97 or $99 for her monthly self-study guide. And that was wonderful. I only needed it for 2 months, so it wasn't too expensive. And it was wonderful. It was so helpful. She has weekly calls that she does on Zoom, and you'll go with her. She'll explain what the outputs are. She'll give you little techniques on how to analyze each of the questions on the exam, which was really helpful for me as well. Studying, again, the 10 knowledge areas, the processes within the process groups, and then I would go to the math equations. Then from the math equations, I would go into the inputs, outputs, tools, and techniques. So I will show you kind of what I did to understand those a little bit better if I have like cool little scratch. It's really just scratch paper. Forgive my handwriting. But me writing stuff down was really helpful. And then like I said, that Quizlet, I would put in just random tidbits in there. But when I think about it, I really only used it to help me study the knowledge areas. And then sometimes if there was verbiage for the formulas that I needed to know. So for example, like earned monetary value or earned value or cost index, cost performance index, things like that, I would use the Quizlet just so it's good for you to know what those things mean, because they're going to use different types of wording on the exam, and you don't want to know a formula or a specific math problem just by the abbreviation. because that could throw you for a loop. There's different ways that they can word it. So it's important for you to understand the definition of those formulas and the definition of the abbreviations. So I used Quizlet mostly for that. So like even I took my sister to get a new phone, and while we were just chilling, I was in the back on Quizlet just going through my flashcards. So that was great about being able to have something that's just quick and easy and on the go. So that's how I went about studying. And then the week before the exam and the week of the exam, I upped my studying from about 3 hours a day to 4 hours a day. So I started waking up at 5 in the morning, and then I would study for about 2 hours, and then I would start studying again after work at 7 o'clock. And I would study for another 2 hours, just constantly doing everything I just mentioned before. I was off of social media for 2 months before the exam. So I did like a little goodbye on Instagram. I deleted Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Facebook. Then only thing I kept on was YouTube, and that was just helpful because it was like a study tool. It would go into detail about things that I wasn't totally sure about in the PMBOK guide. And that was so helpful because I wasn't just randomly finding myself going on Twitter without even thinking. You know, kind of when you're driving someplace and you don't know how you got there, that's what I would do with my apps. Like I'd just be sitting at my desk and all of a sudden I'm scrolling through the feed, and for what? Why? I miss out on stuff. I know there's times when I would hear like music playing downstairs and people laughing and carrying on while I'm trying to fall asleep. But now we're celebrating the fact that I passed my PMP. So we'll also celebrate you when you pass, even though there's certain sacrifices that you have to make depending on your study habits and the way that you study. So that is how I went about studying for the PMP, and I have another video on taking the exam. So I hope that you found this valuable, and feel free to drop down some notes on your best ways to study, because there's no one who is not good at studying, I think. I think that you just need to find the best tool for you. And one of my past mentors told me that when I was studying for the GMAT, they were telling me, if you don't understand something, just find a different medium to teach you. Find a different book, find a different instructor. Don't say you can't do it. You can totally do it. You just need to find what speaks to you the best. So understand if you're a visual learner, understand if you need to hear it a few times, understand if you need to write it. So even if you need to speak into your phone and just hear it while you're hanging out around the house, while you're driving, while you're folding laundry, it's really helpful, the different types of ways. And I don't want to say there's no excuse nowadays, but I would like to think that it's amazing all of the tools that we have at our disposal to be able to learn things. So give it a try, and like I said, drop some tips and tricks that you may have and how you just study best. Even if you're not, I don't know why you're still watching this video if you're not taking the PMP, but even if you're not taking the PMP, just drop in some cool ways that you like to learn so that other people can learn from you, and you can just help everybody. Like I said, the saying is, we learn, do, and share, and that is how we become worth knowing, not just well known. So thanks again for watching Professionella TV, learning about studying for the PMP exam. Thank you.